Richard.
Look at that.
Shows how fat I am. Okay, we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Flag up here, flag back there, your choice. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I believe we have 15 or 16 members, a couple of guests, but I'll do all that after. Our speaker today will be introduced by Corky. Let's be right into it.
Okay. Can you hear? Okay. Our speaker today is Jeff Hamm, the Executive Director of the Alzheimer's and Dementia Alliance of Wisconsin. He's had a rather diverse career. He graduated from St. John's University in Minnesota with a Bachelor's of Government, and then in 1975, a Master's in Political Science from UW-Madison. Between 1975 and 2018, he has done things such as serve as a media specialist and project coordinator for the Center for Education and Work. He's also been in the departments of art history and kinesiology, assistant director for the Education Academic Services in the School of Education here at Madison, assistant dean of the Education Academic Services School of Education, finally associate dean for student academic affairs at the School of Education. He then made a career change, a master's in social work, specializing in geriatrics. He got his MSW in May of 2020. After receiving his degree, he became a dementia outreach specialist for the organization for which he works, and then was appointed interim executive director and finally permanent director for the Alzheimer's and Dementia Associated Alliance of Wisconsin. Let's welcome Jeffrey Hamm.
Thanks so much, Corky. Really appreciate it. I'll go a minute longer in terms of the introduction. I just want to say thanks so much for inviting me. I really appreciate having the opportunity to be here. Thanks especially for Jim Patch for reaching out. And I wanted to make sure everybody knew that I was here with my colleague Rose Carney, who is a dementia outreach specialist with our agency. And we're terrifically lucky to have her, and she serves Dane County, so I brought her along so we could all see her.
I'll get that back up.
That's okay. I'm going to try to talk for 25 minutes, and so I'm going to really watch the time. I've got a clock back there so that there's time for questions. So it also means I'm going to talk pretty fast, so this is not going to be a dementia-friendly presentation. So I want to talk a little bit about our agency. I want to do a little education about dementia. And then I've got some asks for you, right? I'm an executive director. It doesn't involve any money though, but I've got some asks for you at the end. So I want to start a little bit by talking about myself just for another second.
Yep.
As Corky said, I worked at the university for many, many years, approximately 35 years, and my last 20 years I was an academic affairs dean in the School of Education. I retired at 65 in 2018, and I said, I'm not done working, but I'm done working at the university. God bless the university. And I went back to school. I literally retired one day in September and started my Master's of Social Work program the next day. And I had thought about maybe doing some work in end of life and palliative care, but I was really fortunate in getting my first placement at the UW Health geriatric clinic, which was then at University Station, and working in the memory assessment clinic there. And I just loved it. I worked with Mary Kerwin, who was my supervisor there. And then I went on to work at the VA for my second year with Teresa Swader at the GREC, again working in memory assessment. And I really loved it. But one of the things I realized very quickly was that in a busy memory assessment clinic, you don't get a chance to follow up with the family. They get their diagnosis and then pretty much they're gone. And I thought, oh my God, what's happening to these families? They need a lot more education, they need a lot more support. And I realized that we were sending people to the Alzheimer's and Dementia Alliance of Wisconsin, at least from the UW Health Clinic. So I went there and I interviewed some folks and said, what do you do here? Tell me about it. And I walked away saying, this is a great place. Boy, I don't know, this will never happen, but I could see working here. So when I did have a chance to do some volunteer work when I was still in my program, December 2019, I went back to ADAW and said, hey, could you take an old guy who's still not a social worker yet and maybe find something for me to do? And I was able to do some volunteer work and then actually got hired in September 2020 as a part-time outreach specialist in Columbia, Sauk, and Dane counties. And I loved it. I loved it. It was half-time, for a retiree, this was like doing wonderful, wonderful work. And then the director called me in February 2021 saying, I've got my dream job that's been offered to me and I'm going back to Iowa. And I'm going to myself, why did you call me? And she says, we'd like you to be, the board of directors and I would like you to be the interim executive director. So this is not what I signed up for, right? I've been doing administration for a long time, but I was going to be a social worker working with families and working with individuals. And I said, yes, sure, I can take that on for 6 months as an interim. And then in August, they said, hey, how about a little longer than interim? And I said, 3 years. You got 3 years of my time. And I feel very, very fortunate. But that's how a person goes from being a volunteer to being an executive director. I'm sure you've heard of So, next slide, please. Everybody in this field pretty much has a dementia story. I mean, that drives us and that motivates us in our work. And my dementia story is around my dad, who died 11 years ago last month with vascular dementia. A really amazing guy. And somebody I looked up to. His last 3 years were nothing short of hell, and probably more than that. And I was of no particular help because I did not know what was going on and never really caught on to what was happening and understanding particularly what was going to be helpful to him. I never found resources. I felt like once I got on top of one thing, a little tiny bit, a couple of other things hit me up the side of the head. So it was an extremely painful, confusing, perplexing time for me. And I'm sure that there are some out here who have had those kind of experiences themselves. So when my dad passed away finally, he spent his last year out at Badger Prairie in Verona. When he passed away, I said to myself, I hope someday I can figure out what just happened to us all as a family, what happened to him, and maybe make a difference in other people's lives. And so, careful what you wish for, here I am. Next slide, please. Talk a little bit about our agency. Our mission is pretty straightforward, is to serve individuals and families whose lives have been affected by dementia. Our tagline is partners along the journey, and what that means is we try to be available to families even before there's a diagnosis. Sometimes that's where we see folks, all the way up to end of life and past. We have caregivers who continue to participate in our caregiver support groups even after their loved one has passed away. And they're wonderful resources to other people in the group. So that's a real blessing to everybody when they continue to participate. So it's sort of the opposite of clinic work. Clinic work is lots of people, seeing lots of people, lots of crises, moving on to see somebody else. And our work is very much long-term work with families and individuals, and it's very satisfying. We cover 10 counties in south central and southwestern Wisconsin, so we're sort of the east in Dane County. We're the eastern most county of our area, and we go all the way to Crawford and the river, and then south. We have 10 staff, so we're a really small organization, including 10 of us who do direct service. Rose is one. I actually, even as an ED, continue to do direct service and work with families and caregivers. I facilitate the men's group, for example. Our history, we go back to 1985 when we were established. From 1991 through 2009, we were actually the Alzheimer's Association chapter in this south central, southwestern part of the state. For lots of reasons that we could talk about over beers, we disaffiliated from the Alzheimer's Association in 2010, and so we have been a separate organization. So we're not the Alzheimer's Association. We're not affiliated with any national organization. We're grassroots right here in Wisconsin, in this part of Wisconsin. And we collaborate with lots of folks. We collaborate with the Wisconsin Alzheimer's Disease Research Center. We collaborate with the dementia care specialists who are located in the Aging and Disability Resource Centers. Of course, we work with memory clinics very closely. We work with long-term care facilities and with home care facilities. And actually, Alzheimer's Association is a good sister organization, and we're good pals. We work together as much as we can, providing service. And then any organization or agency that serves older adults, we connect with. So we're also close to Newbridge, for example, here in town. So there are about 6 basic things that we do as an agency. I'm going to go through these pretty quickly. We do what we call care consultations, which are one-on-one or one-on-many meetings with either individuals who have a diagnosis or their families or both. We do information and referral contacts, which is just people phoning us up and saying, who do we talk to, and we answer. But a lot of our work is around care consultations, face-to-face and on the phone. We do education programs for families, for communities, and for professionals, and we used to do those face-to-face, and a lot of those are getting done at a distance online since the pandemic. We run support groups for caregivers, care partners. We do programs for persons living with a diagnosis, which is something fairly unique. We do, and Rose could certainly talk about this afterward if you wanted to chat with her, but we do some really important groups that create community for people with a diagnosis who can talk to each other and really find a community of support, which is critically important, especially for people early in the journey. We specifically do outreach to the Black community. We have a half-time diversity outreach staff person, Barbara McKinney. If you've heard of Barbara, she's one of our elders. She works half-time for us and connects with the Black community around issues of dementia. And finally, we do dementia. We administer dementia outreach grants on behalf of Dane County. Mary Severson does that. And, we serve lots of families that way. So those are the 6 or so main things that we're about in terms of our activities. All of our programs and services are free to participants. Every once in a while, we'll run across somebody who says, well, how much does it cost to do X, Y, Z? We say it doesn't cost you anything. And we'll talk about our finances in a minute and how we do that. But our programs are entirely free to participants. Just to give you a sense of what our service data, we had approximately 1,000 education program participants in the last year. We served over 500 families with care consultations and INR contacts, and we had 1,300 participants in our caregiver support groups and our programs serving persons living with dementia. And keep in mind that practically all of those things in Dane County went from face to face to at a distance, and I'll talk a little bit about what our services during the pandemic looked like and how that changed. And then, of course, we had 79 families who got respite grants, which is really important for those families. So the pandemic had huge impacts on our clients, both those with dementia and their caregivers, as you might know. Lots of isolation, lots of unexpected rapid progression in the disease process, lots of caregiver burden and strain, and then, of course, unanticipated early deaths. It was just really, really a tough time for those people who had dementia and their caregivers. During the pandemic, our services really changed pretty dramatically. We started serving populations that never could be served when all we did was face-to-face. So people who had to be home because they couldn't leave their loved one, they actually could jump on a computer and join a caregiver support group or an education program or a memory cafe. And so we got people connected that had never been connected before. We created new groups. We have a statewide Lewy body dementia group that never existed before, that again is online and has been supported through the Lewy Body Dementia Association. So we're excited about that, and plenty of other groups that have started. And what's really interesting is that our groups met more frequently. Almost all of our groups were monthly, our support groups. We had a support group. We have no support groups that meet less than twice a month. Okay, they just wanted to meet. And we had a monthly group that met on Thursday afternoon that meets every single week and has met every single week since the pandemic started. It's really amazing. Now, of course, this creates some things that we're really kind of nervous about when it comes to moving back to face-to-face, because we can't just let go of all of the at-a-distance kind of programming that we had, because those people can't literally come to our office or come in for us. So we're not alone. There are lots of agencies worried about this, but we're going to have to figure out how do we provide all of these services when they look so different. In terms of funding, we have, I like to say we have $1 million budget. That's what I tend to tell people. We've been over $1 million. We're now, I think, this year's budget is about $900,000. We get some financial support, as I've suggested, from Dane County and from the UW, but well over 80% of our operating budget is all donations. So it's families and friends who are basically providing the support for us to keep going, and it's really been amazing, their support. Our big fundraisers are our 7 Alzheimer's walks that happen mostly in September. There's one in August and there's one in October. The one here in Madison is at Albert Park, middle of the month. I think it's the 18th of September, Sunday the 18th this coming year. And these have been big and important fundraisers for us. We like to remind people that the funds we raise stay right here in Wisconsin. We're not sending them to, an unnamed national entity. And they come and they serve, they're basically to pay for the services that folks are getting. So the money stays in Wisconsin and serves residents of the state. So one of the neat things that happens is that people who've not been served by us, but who really care about these issues of dementia, Alzheimer's disease, they give us money because they know they're going to, the money that they give us is going to actually go to direct services for people here in this area, in this state, in this part of the state. So a little education, and you all probably know this, I'm sorry, so I apologize if I'm going over things that you know already, but we find it helpful to kind of talk about these big issues about dementia with groups. Dementia is an umbrella term. It's not a specific disease. It's an umbrella term that represents a set of symptoms. It is a diagnosis, but it's a set of symptoms. And dementia is officially defined as a decline in cognitive functioning that's severe enough to interfere with everyday life. And when we say interfere with everyday life, we don't mean you can't get dressed or you can't eat. We mean things like you can't do your home finances anymore. You can't drive anymore. You have trouble with your medications. You have trouble cleaning the house. All of these things could be a way in which your everyday life is affected by dementia. And cognitive functioning, that term cognitive functioning, doesn't just mean memory. People think of that because Alzheimer's disease, which is one of the things that causes dementia, irreversible dementia, is usually characterized by memory loss. But as Rose and I know, we can see lots of folks who have dementia whose first issue is not memory, and actually memory may not become a problem until very late in their disease. Instead, it might be language. There are dementias that really affect language right off the bat, or attention, decision-making, perception, coordination and balance, or personality and social behavior. So the frontotemporal dementias are often characterized by either a language problem or social behavior issues. I really want to emphasize that many of the symptoms of dementia that people see right away are treatable. So it's treatable causes that are causing some of the dementia. So for example, when somebody comes to the memory assessment clinic, we have to figure out, is it dementia or are they depressed? Okay, so depression can look like dementia. We know that, and many of you may know this, UTIs, right, can cause, urinary tract infections can cause dementia-like symptoms. So can medication, medication interaction. There are lots of underlying medical issues that can result in dementia symptoms. So one of our big things is to say, if something has come on quickly that looks like dementia, it may well not be dementia because dementia comes on pretty slowly and progressively. It may well be a medical issue and please get an assessment as soon as possible. The most common causes of irreversible dementia are Alzheimer's disease, which I'm going to talk just a little bit more about in a second, vascular dementia, which is what my dad died from, Lewy body dementia or dementia with Lewy bodies, it's also called, and frontal temporal lobe dementia or frontal temporal dementia. Over 6 million Americans are living with Alzheimer's disease, and that's expected to go to 14 million by 2050, and that's just because of us. That's because of our baby boomers, right? As we age, there are just going to be more folks with dementia with such a large group. Dementia is associated with age, it's associated with family history, and often with cardiovascular risks. Most cases begin after 65. We tend to see a lot of people in their 70s or 80s, but some begin earlier, and I've even talked to somebody here who had a family member who had younger onset dementia, either Alzheimer's disease or frontal temporal lobe dementia. Frontal temporal dementia often starts very young, as early as the 50s and sometimes even the 40s. So you'll see people with dementia, and that dementia goes pretty quickly too. Dementia is a health equity issue. African Americans have twice the risk of being diagnosed with dementia as do white Americans. And Latinx Hispanic Americans have 1.5 times the risk. And we're not positive why. We think it's a whole combination of things, but we know that this is the case, and it's something that we just really need to be attentive to. And it's one of the reasons why we find it so important that we have someone who goes out into the African American community and works with that community around these issues. And of course, there's an enormous stigma around dementia that just goes without saying. I'm going to reference that again in a minute or so. I want to talk too for just a second about Alzheimer's disease, because people kind of think of Alzheimer's disease and dementia as the same thing, and it's not. As I said, Alzheimer's disease is a primary cause of dementia. 60 to 80% of people with irreversible dementia probably have Alzheimer's disease or some combination of it. It's the 6th leading cause of death in the US. And it usually starts with short-term memory problems, or with getting lost, or with lack of motivation and interest. We see lots of folks diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease whose early symptoms are they just don't get out of bed. Again, this looks like depression, right? But it's apathy that goes with lack of motivation, and it's actually one of the symptoms of Alzheimer's disease. Often by many psychiatrists considered actually the most common symptom. Medications can temporarily reduce the symptoms of AD, which is one good reason why early diagnosis is important. And what's really important too is that lifespans of people with Alzheimer's disease can run anywhere from 3 to 20 years, although the average lifespan is about 8 to 10 years. But it's important to remember that people with this diagnosis can live a long time in the early mild stage, especially if they're well educated. And so this is really important to think about, and why our early stage programs where we're serving people with a recent diagnosis are really, really important to us. So I have 5 asks for you. No money involved, no checkbooks, no opening of purses or wallets. Just just looking for some open minds and some open hearts. And I'd love you to be able to pick one or two of these, if you would. The first one is learn a little bit more about dementia. There are some great websites. The National Institute on Aging has got a great one called Alzheimer's.gov. The Alzheimer's Association is fantastic, has a fantastic website. And we love the Alzheimer's Society in the UK. The UK is really ahead of us as a nation in working around dementia. They're really, really cutting edge. And so the Alzheimer's Society is a great place to go. They have great videos. We steal their videos all the time, right, Rose? And then the books. There are tons of books out there, but some of you may already know My Two Elaines by Marty Schreiber, which is really good, especially good for guys, because he wrote it for guys, men caregivers. Still Alice, I just read recently. It's a fictional account, but it's a fantastic account of somebody going through Alzheimer's disease, and of course there's the film. A Tattoo on My Brain is a new book by a neurologist who worked with Alzheimer's patients and then realized after getting a genetic test that he had Alzheimer's disease himself, and it's really an amazing book. And then 10,000 Joys and 10,000 Sorrows is just one of my favorites. So that's one ask. My second is really, really important. Reach out to friends and family who you know have a dementia diagnosis, please. It is really tough to have the diagnosis and then suddenly be afraid to tell people or tell people in your life and have them all disappear on you, because that's actually what we hear from our clients. Anything that you can do to reach out. Depression is very common for people with dementia, so connecting with them is really going to be helpful to them. Isolation can be harmful, and the caregivers desperately need respite. So being able to spend an hour or two with your friend or your family member and let that caregiver get away can be a lifesaver for them. Your presence is just really comforting and healing, so please consider doing that. Would love you to promote dementia-friendly communities and organizations. There are the Aging and Disability Resource Center. Their dementia care specialist is specifically charged with working around dementia-friendly organizations and communities. We have some great dementia-friendly community organizations. West Madison has one, Monona has one. There are others in the area. So anything you could do to support or maybe join those kind of organizations would be really helpful. That's a great way to fight stigma. If you have symptoms or a loved one has symptoms, please get a cognitive assessment. Rule out those medically reversible issues. And there are many advantages to early identification. Besides the medications that are available, folks can also do some long-term planning, which is critically important. And of course, you can get education from us or any other organizations that might be available to support. And then 5, take care of your own brain health. Monitor your cardiovascular health. If you've got, like me, high blood pressure, if you've got, like me, blood sugar issues, and genetics, my dad died with vascular dementia, you really want to keep it on top of that. But also the next 6 are the things that we know from research really make a difference, whether you're trying to stave off brain issues or whether you've been diagnosed already. There is a tremendous amount of research that said exercise makes a difference for your brain. Please keep that in mind. A healthy diet can make a huge difference. Keeping your brain challenged and engaged. Sleep. There's more and more research that suggests sleep is a really important issue when it comes to dementia. Reduce stress in every way you can and maintain your social contacts. So those are my 5 asks. Love you to do 1 or 2 of them if they're all possible, and to the degree that you find you're able to do it, then you become partners with us in our work with folks preventing dementia whenever possible, but also working with those folks who have been found to be diagnosed with this challenging issue. So thank you so much for the opportunity. And if you have any questions or any stories, I've already had people come up to me with their stories, and I really appreciate that. Thanks so much.
I'll start with one. I don't see any hands. And you may not be able to answer this, but years ago, the amyloid plaque buildup in brains. I haven't read much about the research on that lately.
Yeah, there's a lot of research that continues around that, and anybody, when I say aducanumab, does anybody know what I'm talking about? Is that Aduhelm? Does this ring a bell to anybody?
Is that a drug?
This is the new big thing that the FDA approved, right, back in June. And it specifically is an amyloid beta buster.
Okay.
So that's actually what it's after. So yes, that's.
But the research suggests it doesn't prolong life even.
You mean that particular drug?
Yes, because
that
Medicare was going to pay for it, but it's really expensive, and the
Yes.
argument was, why pay for it if it doesn't do much?
Yeah, it's very, very contentious.
Okay.
Very contentious.
Still doing research on it.
$50,000 for a year's worth of infusion of that. Yeah. That's why everybody's Part B Medicare went up this year. Anybody notice that? The largest increase?
Yep.
Largest increase ever. And half of that they think was aducanumab. Because they thought it was going to. But now what happened is the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services actually said, we're not going to pay for it for everybody, only people in clinical trials. So there's a huge, huge political battle out there that I'm going to stay away from personally. But it's a big issue.
John.
So how do we initially make contact with you?
Phone call, 608-232-3400. And
Website?
Yeah, that's good.
Your website?
Website is alzwisc.org, alzwisc.org. And so you'll find our phone number there too. What you'll do when you get a phone, when you call the phone number, you'll be invited to talk to a dementia outreach specialist. I mean, that will be the message. And Rose will literally be on the other end of that phone line. Now, if she's busy, she'll get the message, but the message goes to all of us, and Rose and I listen to everything. So that's, but it'll go to Rose. So that's one reason I wanted her here.
What is the interaction of strokes with this general area of losing memory and so on?
Yeah, strokes are, when I use the term vascular dementia, that's what that's about. I didn't go into that, but strokes are what cause vascular dementia. Either little strokes, lots of little ones, or sometimes great big ones. And so vascular dementia looks different often than other dementias. Most dementias look like, I don't know how best to do this, in terms of loss of memory, it goes here and it goes like this, it gets worse and worse. That's Alzheimer's disease. With vascular dementia, it's like, well, I'll start here. You're doing okay, and then you drop, and then you plateau, and then you have another stroke, and you drop, and then you plateau. And this was my dad. He didn't get gradually worse. He would have these incidents because he'd have strokes or have some other vascular problem and then get worse and then plateau out. So it looks different. A lot of people, though, with vascular dementia also have Alzheimer's disease. So one of the things I didn't talk about was mixed dementia. It's very common to have vascular dementia and Alzheimer's dementia at the same time. So you'll see these weird combinations of symptoms because you've got a couple different dementias. Lewy body dementia and Alzheimer's disease are also very common together. So some of these just go together and then they make it a mess for the physician and the gerontologist and all these geriatric physician and geriatric psychiatrist and psychologist to figure out what is going on exactly because it's so complicated. Is that helpful?
It occurred in my family.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm with you.
In
I'm with you. That's my dad. That's what took him out.
my case, a mother.
Yeah.
Are there good studies of inherited Alzheimer's, dementia, or is it all correlative yet?
No, there are good studies, we know, that's the Daniel Gilbert book. He knew that when he saw his genetic tests come back, he saw that he had two genes that when you put them together, your chances of having young onset dementia were extremely high. And he was suddenly realizing, oh, those are the symptoms. And his first symptom was, interestingly enough, loss of smell. They talk about anybody ever heard of the peanut butter test when it comes to dementia? It's not quite a joke, actually, because it's very common with Alzheimer's disease to lose your sense of smell, and thus your sense of taste. And sometimes you can lose that sense of smell well in advance of any other symptom, and that's what happened with Gilbert, and that's how he put the pieces together. So yes, there are certain genetic markers that very clearly connect to Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
Could you go back to the slide that talked about taking care of your brain, because I missed a couple at the very end of that. I got this right down, sleep, and then.
Sleep, stress is the next one. Reduce your stress and socialize.
Back further. There we go.
Maintain your social contacts.
So keep doing crossword puzzles.
Would you put any of those in, those are not necessarily in order of importance, or they're all equally important?
I kind of put them in order of importance in the sense that I put exercise first because the research is so strong around exercise. And I think diet is really, really important. The next four, you could probably stress has got the least research around it, but it is one of the things that scientists are really looking at as a possible reason why there is more dementia in the African American and in the Latinx Hispanic communities. That stress has resulted in accelerated aging. There's a lot of research on accelerated aging, especially in communities of color. And if you're aging faster, your cells are aging faster, it also means you might actually be more vulnerable to dementia earlier. And that could be an explanation for the increase and the earlier onset.
One more. You guys fight it out.
That's all right, take Doug.
Well, it sounds like we're really lucky here in Dane County and Southwest Wisconsin to have your organization. But what about other areas of the country? Are there similar organizations kind of spread around that cover the country?
Yeah, I would say the Alzheimer's Association and chapters are probably the most widespread. But there are organizations like ours that are not connected with the Alzheimer's Association in other parts of the country. I think Arkansas disaffiliated early. There's one in North Carolina. I'm trying to think where else. But I think if you look across the country, it's the Alzheimer's Association that folks depend on. I have to be careful what I say here because I know too much about the Alzheimer's Association here. But I mean, they took a hit like everybody did in the pandemic. And they try to have people on the ground, but they really depend on volunteers a lot. And so when people can't volunteer, then it's harder for them to provide services. And I know their program director told me straight out some months ago, Jeff, you know, we're sending a lot of people to you because you've been able to maintain your staff during the pandemic, and we haven't necessarily always, and we know you've got services. So that's why we want to collaborate with them and be, you know, good siblings with them and others who do this work. But also the Aging and Disability Resource Centers, you know, Wisconsin, I have to say, there's every indication that Wisconsin is ahead of most other states in serving people with dementia. That we are really cutting edge. I've asked other people saying, where do I go across the country to find other examples of really good work in this area? And they say, I hate to tell you, but you know, Wisconsin is a leader. Between our having dementia care specialists, and more money went to creating dementia care specialists out of this most recent budget. So every single county has money for dementia care specialists, at least for half-time. So our aging and disability resource centers have resources. We do a really good job here. At the same time, we're a very rural and much older population. I mean, if you look at the population, at the aging of the state, and there are some great things on the Department of Human Services website, starting about Wausau up north, it is really an aging population. I mean, compared to Madison, Milwaukee down here. And that's a huge worry because it's rural, it's got less money, and it's aging tremendously. So we've got a lot of things that we've got to do in the state to make sure that those folks get services as time goes on.
Well, thank you very much, Jeff. You're free to stay around and hear our business talk, but I know you probably have work to do, so your choice.
Do we run? I think we better run.
Okay.
Listen,
Yes, I like somebody telling executive director what he should do. That's good. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Abe right now. You ready to go?
Yeah, he's ready.
Yep, here you go.
A little bit of,
Abe's going to talk about the foundation and a little reflection, I think.
this is a team thing, Max. Yeah. Well, this is performance of the foundation the last year. Just moving forward. Just a little history. Our foundation was started in 1963. It's a 501c3, and it's solely for the support of this club's benevolence budget, is the way it's put in our bylaws. There's a 9-member board of trustees, plus the president-elect of the club is also on the trustees. U.S. Bank is our financial manager, and they charge us 25 basis points as our annual management fee. So that's basically our biggest expense. We have a non-restricted or unrestricted fund, which is the largest part of our resource, and then 3 restricted funds: the live bill, the Heidemann, and the OSTED fund. And our annual grant to the club for its benevolence budget is 5% of the average balance for the last 3 years in the unrestricted fund. So that's where our money goes. Okay, next one. This shows what the fund has done over the last 5 years. You see that it dropped in 1970 to the end of 1918, and then we've had 3 years of real good growth. So we're up over $2 million right now in total assets in the foundation. Next slide. Our average return this past year, we were just over 15% in annual return to the foundation. The 3-year average annual return is actually 16. The 5-year is 12, and I think the 10-year return is about 10%. So it's we've had a good run for really the last decade. And market value at the end of last year was $2.1 million total market value. This shows how the money has been invested, and I think this probably goes for a number of years. We're right at 60% in equities, in stocks. We've been about 35% consistent in fixed income, and about 4 to 5% in real estate, and a little bit of cash. All of these funds are invested in either ETFs or mutual funds. There are no individual stocks or bonds in this portfolio. Okay, next one. And this is just a table. It's pretty small. I think I put it in. I put an annual report that's on each of the tables if you want to look at that. But that shows, again, basically the same information, but it shows that our real growth has been through investment growth. not an annual fundraising type of thing. If you look at our total income, it's down the bottom line, it's around 1%. If you look at 1.5%. These last three figures were from the year-end report that came from US Bank. Okay, what do we have next? Ken, you're it. Ken's our treasurer.
So here we've got just a few more pages. My job as treasurer is basically to write checks and collect donations. And at the end of the year, consolidate it all and put charges and revenue to each of these unrestricted and restricted accounts. So the birthday is down a little bit. There were 38 members that donated to the birthday fund this last year compared to 42 in 2020. We didn't have any auction or golf outing donations. Money that came in from, this is donations to the scholarship funds. They're down a little bit this year, but still good. The memorials, normally we only have $2,500, $200 a year in memorials, but this year, Dave Mortensen passed away, and a huge part of the $2,375 came from memorial funds that were given to the Kiwanis Club of Madison. The Miracle League, we had donations from the club and the foundation of 25,000, and there was one check that came in after the first of the year for $500, and so that's why it's in the 2021. So there are your totals for donations. And then the committee budgets, this is what he was talking about, was the 3-year running average for an unrestricted account, and taking 5% of that. So in 2020, it ended up being 55,000, and in 2021, it's 59. And the last slide will show you what got coming up for next year. Madison College scholarships, we didn't participate in that this year. And every year we've been giving to the restricted account, the Boston scholarship, $1,000, and the Harvest program, adult role models in science, 11,000. That's probably going to change in the coming year. We're talking about that. Item fund, the same thing there. We take a 5% of the previous total, and this last year we didn't do anything, so didn't write a check. Scholarship payments, this year we did give out Nicole and her group $7,500. Miracle League, you can see the 50,000 in this year, 2021 nothing. And then that bank fees, allocated expenses of 6,100. There was a US Bank, we gave them, they charged us $4,961. The state of Wisconsin requirement of $10 filing fee, honorarium of $500, printing email stamps, $100, and then the tax, preparation of tax, we have that done by Sorge. It cost us $530 for a total of $61.01. So on to the next one, Richard. Here we see the unrestricted, went up quite a little bit again because of the investment portfolio performing quite well. And those funds that we got from the US Bank and 15%, those are distributed not only to the unrestricted fund, but the personal liability and the hiding fund in proportion to what we are in the total. And then fund balances, even though we gave a lot of money out, we still have 13,841 accumulated at the end of the year for the scholarships. So the total that we have in the foundation at the end of 2021 was like, it said $2,111,000. And then the last slide, you can see because the fund balances have increased and the rolling average has increased every year accordingly. So we will be giving the call $68,618 in the 21-22 year account. So, if you have any questions, call.
Yeah, I should know this, but what is the Boston Scholarship?
The Posted family is, somebody else would probably do a better
Yeah,
job of explaining.
Gustav Posted was a long-term member of this club. He was a faculty member at UW in the Animal Science Department. And when he passed, his friends established that fund in the foundation to give a scholarship in the animal nutrition area, which was his specialty.
So we give it to undergrads?
It could go to undergrad or graduate students.
And feed genetics and so on and so forth in the departments of animal science, dairy science, poultry science, etc., or related to it. And can be used for almost anything. Go to a meeting, independent research, it's a big envelope.
Thank you.
Other questions there?
Thank you.
Okay, just the last two or three quick, these are the board of directors for the last year, and Ken has continued to serve as treasurer even though he's not been a trustee. The trustees can elect the secretary, the vice president, and the treasurer, and they can come from anywhere. So, my term, Mike Figge's term, and David Weller's terms on the board ended at the end of December. We agreed that we would serve additional 3-year terms. We completed our first year. And then Mike Dorn is coming on as a new director, a new trustee, in the place of Meg Galloway. Meg's going to stay on the trustees because she is a president-elect. Next one there, next slide. Yeah, okay. So thank you for the support of the club, for the foundation this year with birthday club and memorials and all the other things. On the website, you will find this annual report. I put a copy on the table. I don't think I give it to Richard to put on the website yet, but it will be there. You can also find an excellent presentation of opportunities for giving to the foundation, particularly if you want to include it in any estate plan. That's on there as well. And the last thing that I'd say is on there, we did complete this year, was a revision and update of the operating manual, or administrative manual for the foundation. And that is on the website. The new copy is on there now. So check the website and you'll find all the documents. Entertain any questions. All right. Easy.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you, Abe. Tom Broad has an announcement.
We got a nice certificate from the Salvation Army for helping with the bell ringing. They raised over $500,000 this last December. And they also told me that we'll be doing the Christmas in July again. We'll ring the bells in July just like we do in December. So I'll be coming to put the arm on you come June here. So start planning your schedule for that. So big thanks to all those who helped out with the bell ringing.
Wow, watch it.
Disaster.
I can't trust you with anything.
Abe's gonna cover next week. You wanna do that now?
Let me just give you a quick announcement.
Yep, an announcement.
The FFA students will be here next Monday. There are 56 of them. We restricted the total number so we can accommodate them here. The teachers have all agreed that their students will wear masks except when they're eating or up there at the podium. We will try to start meal service at about 11:15. So so we finish on time, and Jim said he could accommodate that many, 75 or so people here. He's going to put, glasses and water pitchers on the tables that will do the service like this.
And we do have a keynote speaker.
Speaker is David Drake. He's a faculty member in the, Wild Forestry and Wildlife Ecology Department. And, he's going to talk a bit about his urban canine project, but I think he's also going to talk about opportunities for students in the area. So, very good. And we have I think all 11 of Dane County chapters will be here.
So again, arrive early.
Oh,
11-ish.
I better do one other one. I forgot.
Okay.
We were Wilmar, Tom Broad, Cole Williams,
Bob Rand?
Bob Rand and myself were there, and I forgot, okay, we had salad, chicken, mashed potatoes. I think we had about 36 meals. So we had a good time.
Any other announcements? Because I have a couple of things I want to cover. Okay, as was alluded to with the foundation report, I'm in communication with Anna Cortier, who is running the ARMS program now that Dolly and I have retired. My old unit sustained a $200,000 permanent cut, which impacts Anna and her ability to run the service learning and the after-school science clubs. So she, in the course of writing a 3-year memorandum of understanding between Kiwanis and UW-Madison, is going to ask for, or has asked for additional funds. And in talking with Ken and Abe, I'm going to propose a budget increase as of October 1st that is permanent for the ARMS. So it'll go above the 11,000, and we'll figure out exactly how many extra 1,000 we're going to add to her budget so that she can hire a grad student to help her. Because she and I used to co-teach that course, and when I retired, she was on her own, and it's a lot of work. So that's one announcement. Last week we heard about the literacy project that we are thinking of doing a signature project with, like Madison Reading Project, I believe. So Abe, Ken, and who else? Meg have been in communication with Rowan, who runs that program. Eileen, that's right. Eileen's in Spain right now. We have a proposal from her about some ongoing support for that project. And they will be here, she and maybe a colleague of hers, Rowan, will be back on March 14th to give more details about some of the options. Originally, we thought about an additional van for them, but there are some other projects that she identified, specifically 3 of them, that I would like the club to consider for a permanent signature project funding so that we can support the literacy project in Madison. So they will be here on the 14th. Other things, let me look through here. I registered for the March 26th mid-year conference. Anybody else want to go? It's $25. It's Saturday. It's at Madison College. Ken Seville, the Lieutenant Governor, is asking all clubs to send as many members as possible to learn about kind of the Wisconsin, Upper Michigan endeavors of Kiwanis. So if you want to come, please register, and I did it online, very easy to do. Actually, it was online, the form, and then you print it or make a PDF and send it back to Justin, who's the governor. Visitors.
Executive Secretary.
Executive Secretary, yeah. Governor is Larry Koziel, that's right. My wife's here, Karen, visitor. Anybody else? Ken? Hey. And Ron is here from Madison West. Thank you for coming. And online, I know we had Dennis from Madison West. Anybody else?
George Shuck from Madison West.
To Madison West, George, we had George Beesman as a member, and I think that was it. Stan Craven.
Dan was here for a while, yeah.
So we're doing really well with this hybrid format, that there are some members who just can't make it, but they're religiously showing up on Zoom and joining in the festivities that we have. Again, get here early if you can next week. We'll start food at 11:15. You can mingle and talk to the young students. Wear your masks, even though the mask mandate from Dane County I'm guessing is over as of tomorrow. I don't know if it's officially been disbanded. But because they're young, they're not all vaccinated, I'm gonna be wearing my mask unless I'm stuffing food into it. So, anything else?
What?
Richard, do you have anything?
No, well,
Oh, yes, Richard will not be here next week. He is going to visit.
I'm gonna visit my 93-year-old mom in Indiana. And while I'm a third of the way there, I'm gonna go the rest of the way to Florida. I may tune in and see how my substitute does.
You have a substitute yet?
No, you.
Yeah, okay. Since Abe's gonna run the show next week, I probably can do it, so. And Eileen was the backup, but she won't be back.
She's in Spain.
From Spain, where it looks like she's having a good time. Dick Hammerstrom will be back next week. I think is actually coming back tonight, but he can't bowl. So we're gonna be short a person on the bowling team, but Mr. Icky.
Technical statement. While you were talking, a thing flashed on the screen that said something about the mic. And at that instant, that mic started working perfectly. And it has been working perfectly ever since.
I'm going to talk with Jim about getting a mic that works all the time. It works for me all the time, but I have a loud voice. For others,
this is totally better.
And I can hear it when I talk, but when Jeff was talking, I could hear it not on, coming crackly, and that seems to be the norm, so.
Did anybody else see that flash on the screen?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't think they're connected.
No, they're not.
So
There's a coincidence.
It just was coincidental, I would say.
It's your magnetic personality.
It's my loud
I
voice,
don't
which,
think it was magnetic, and I don't think it was coincidence.
well, you're an engineer, right?
I was.
You what?
I can't
Yeah, I'm a
remember
scientist.
anymore.
Well, we'd have to do some experiments here to figure that out, but I'm gonna talk to Jim about replacing this or something, because too many people
My pleasure.
had trouble with it.
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
First,
thanks,
I
John.
tripped over the cord.
Maybe that's what did it, when Tom kicked the cord, yeah. Okay, so we will see you next week. Have a good week. Say what?
Moment.
Moment of reflection.
Oh, that's me.
Oh, that's right, it is Richard, yes. I don't even check my notes. You have a good one, Richard?
Here
Yes.
somewhere.
Oh,
my God.
Thank you for the reminder.
What's going on here?
Give me a minute. I've been busy.
And when do you leave? You said you leave Saturday, so can't blame it on last minute packing.
I actually did it. It's ready.
Sure it is.
Oh, yeah, I promise.
Thanks, though.
Yeah, there. He's got a lot of papers that I have too.
No, I did it. I did it. I may have to look at my laptop. No, I have.
Not there, not
We
there.
talked a minute. on it.
Okay, I can talk some more. In 2 weeks, we have the 14th. Who's on the 14th? We're gonna talk about literacy, but, Jim, you're in the program. I know the 21st is about police and mental health, because I added that last
Next week
night.
is FFA.
No, that's next week, in 2 weeks, the 14th of March.
Meeting.
Reading?
Very impressive.
You said that y'all was gonna come and talk about.
No.
No, that's